My homeless parents expected me to let them into my house after they abused me for 18 years. I was an only child and pretty much an accidental pregnancy from what relatives have told me, as my parents claimed that they were going to be child-free when they married. They both worked and had their own business that they started together. I was always second to their pesky business. Any other close members of family like my grandparents lived states away and I barely knew anything about them until I was an adult, so I had no other family around my entire childhood. I was practically raised by TV and my school teachers. My own birthdays, by the time I became a teenager, were often spent without my parents as they just give me some money and tell me to go out and buy whatever I wanted. It was more or less the same with Christmas and birthdays. I would receive nothing. Not long after high school ended, my parents told me to pack up and move out. They got an official eviction notice that gave me 30 days to leave. They didn't even help me move. I had to get help from a friend's dad who owns a truck. I ended up renting a crappy apartment and working retail. I had no real life experience and no time for college. Then after just a few months I got fired because my manager legitimately had it out for me and wrote me up for the stupidest things. I was terrible at managing my own money and couldn't find steady employment, so I lost my apartment. I went back to my parents begging for help, but they refused to take me in, not even for a little while, to get back on my feet. I ended up homeless and living out of a tent in someone's backyard in winter. My friends had all moved on to college, some in other states, and I was a broke kid, taking whatever work I could to stay alive. My salvation came when one of the neighbors of my parents found out I was living out of a tent and offered to take me in for a little while so I wouldn't freeze. She helped me badger my parents into telling me how to get in touch with the other members of my estranged family. My parents did not want to say, I guess out of fear of being judged for throwing their son out the way they did, but they coughed up the info and gave me a list of contact details and then told me not to bother them ever again. I called my grandparents from my father's side of the family and they were very surprised and happy to hear from me because they hadn't seen me since I was an infant and I'm their only grandchild. My grandparents, after finding out my situation, flew me over to live with them as soon as they could. They basically adopted me. My parents didn't even see me off at the airport. Despite being invited to, I had zero contact with them for pretty much a decade. My grandparents said they despised my parents for treating me so poorly and legally disowned them by striking them from their wills. After about a year of living with my grandparents, I was able to afford to start going to community college. I got an associate's degree, got a decent job thanks to a recommendation from my grandpa, and eventually my grandparents offered to sell me their house so they could retire to Arizona. My grandma wanted to live in a warmer climate as the cold winter was getting harder and harder on her health every year. I was sad to see them go, but I happily bought the house. They sold it to me for 1/3 its value, and I'll have it paid off in a few more years.